the one hand, you had what you sort of expected. The small town chamber of commerce saying, oh, this is going to kill us. We're all going to go out of business. We're going to lose these jobs. It's going to hurt the people you intend to help, yada, yada. All of the things, all of the myths, charitably myths, that get repeated anytime anyone talks about raising labor standards. And then you also had some other businesses that did different things. So a guy named Don Liberty runs a sports bar called the Bullpen Bar and Grill. It's about a mile south of the airport. It serves a lot of airport workers and a lot of working class residents of SeaTac who come in for a beer and a sandwich and to watch the game of their choice. And Don Liberty, who was actually a Republican, figured out that if airport workers had more money to spend, he was likely going to get more customers. And so he became a very enthusiastic public spokesperson for Proposition 1, the measure. Then you had the guy who was the general manager at the SeaTac's there's a lot of hotels in SeaTac because that's an airport city, but mostly it's the kind of hotels where you're trying to, it's not very, it's not luxury hotels. It's places where pilots and flight crews sleep. It's places where if you have an overnight layover, you just go across the street. It's not generally a luxury hotel town, but there's one exception. There's one luxury hotel that's used for conferences and for higher-end business travelers or people on international layovers. And the general manager of the hotel became the spokesperson against the campaign. And he would host the Vote No committee meetings in a private dining room at the hotel where they'd serve prime rib and red wine at lunch. I don't know what the Aspen Institute's doing here with these sandwiches and bottles of water.
Sorry.
Yeah. And they would talk about what was going to happen if this thing passed. And the hotel said, well, because the SeaTac measure only applied to larger employers. And so they said, well, that's it. We'll just lay off enough people so we don't qualify as a larger employer anymore. We'll cut down the number of rooms. Then the guy who ran a Master Park franchise said he would replace, he was quoted in the press as saying he would replace all of his employees with kiosks. Probably the most shocking thing that got said, and it's probably not shocking to anyone here that we occasionally had good information get reported out of those committee meetings. But one time the general manager of the hotel said, if this passes, I won't be able to offer my employees shift meals anymore. In other words, the free meals that restaurant workers often get before or after their shift. And someday that's the only meal they get. Okay. But there's a happy ending to the story. The Master Park franchise guy, after he threatened to replace all of his employees with kiosks, after the measure passed, he hung a big sign on his fence that said, now hiring $15 an hour. Dana Milbank with the Washington Post called him and said, what's up? And he says, well, it turns out my customers actually want customer service after all. My employees are happy campers these days. Direct quote. And the hotel, the investors met right after the measure passed, and because they were going to not be earning as much ROI per room night based on increased labor costs, they decided to double the size of the hotel and add a new wing with 2 presidential suites and a spa, so that they could get more business and realize the same projections that they'd had, sort of going into the business. So, in general, I mean, some businesses fought for 2 years through litigation. Those were the unhappy ones who now have to write tens of millions of dollars of back paychecks to make people whole for the money they didn't get when the initiative passed, because it was sustained through every court of the land and is now the law.